Guys, please take your seats if possible.
Thank you. So let me call the second speaker, Sofra from Hong Kong. She's a neurologist. Join me to welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me here. I will be talking about how you can do body shaping via basically hormonal balance. And the truth is that if people have a hormonal imbalance, they cannot lose weight and they cannot build muscle like if they have a growth hormone imbalance. So the trick is not just exercising, the trick is the hormones, the hormonal balance. And there is a very large range. So even if you are at the lower part of your range, you can be kind of a problem, but nobody is going to treat this because they say, well, you know, you're still in the normal range. But if you're on the peak, that's when your body is functioning properly. Now, what are hormones? Hormones are communicators. They're cellular communication agents. And there is a spectrum of hormonal substances that are produced by cells that is quite wide. Several hormones, about thousands and thousands of hormones. Of course, we only know a few of them, the popular ones, like growth hormone and cortisol and T3, etc. But there's several hormones. And it's not only the endocrine cells, but even non-endocrine cells that produce hormones, like neurons, some types of lymphocytes, mast cells, natural killer cells, endothelial cells, monocytes, platelets. All of these cells are producing hormones. Now, the hormonal problem is a systemic problem, and it cannot be solved by changing one component. You have to change several components simultaneously to attain this hormonal balance. Now, there is a problem. The aging problem is intricately related to the hormonal imbalance. So you have a decline in certain hormones, you have an increase in other hormones, that's the imbalance situation. You have reduced resting metabolic rate. That's very interesting. Basically, as you're aging, when you're sitting down, you're losing less calories than a younger person, or when you're sleeping. So it's a reduced resting metabolic rate. And diminished energy production, the separation of your red blood cells, increased toxicity. Toxicity will increase the metabolism, will interfere with metabolism and all other endocrinological aspects. And here are the effects of hormonal imbalance. Cortisol is going to give wrinkles, pigmentations, other hair loss, other problems. Testosterone also, the cortisol is going up, testosterone growth hormone, and IGF-1 and TSH and several other hormones are going down, estrogen, progesterone, PGA, etc. And there, of course, there is the hormonal therapy, and bioidentical hormones have been rendered safe by the FDA. However, there are other compounded preparations that are not been approved by the FDA. And there are some risks involved, like blood clots and stroke and heart disease, breast cancer, etc. Now, what about diet? The problem with diet is that as your fat cells release the fat to become energy, it also releases toxins. And the toxins are interfering with your entire endocrinological system. And the problem is these detox products that you have in the market, like drinks and food pads, they do not deal with persistent organic pollutants, which is a problem. And toxicity will interfere with all hormones. It basically interferes, it goes into the hormonal receptor and interferes with it. And what happens is that you have two hormones called leptin and ghrelin. The ghrelin increases the hunger, the leptin decreases hunger. And when these are interfered, in both cases, you end up starving. Basically, the leptin will decrease the hunger, so you cannot decrease hunger anymore, so you're starving. And the ghrelin will just continue increasing hunger without the feedback loop to say, now the stomach is filled. So no matter what, you're gonna end up, so basically the more toxic you are, the more hungry you are. And the more hungry you are, the more weight you put in, and your visceral fat increases, and the fat stores toxins, so you're more toxic you become, so it's a vicious circle. And this is a visual. The problem is that visceral fat is the biggest problem. Why? Because not only it wraps itself around organs, it enters the organs, invades them. Like this is a fatty liver, for example. And you can see this liver cannot function. And working out with visceral fat, okay, at a younger age, yes, you can do it. But after a certain age, like 50, 55, you cannot. You're gonna break your back because your body cannot support all this strenuous exercise. And there is another problem. As your testosterone, when you're in very strenuous exercise, as your cortisol increases, your testosterone decreases, because there's a negative inverted relationship between testosterone and cortisol. So you end up, you exercise, that's great, but then if you're over-exercise, you're increasing the cortisol interferes with everything, and you go back to square one, where you start putting weight, because cortisol will increase your weight. Another problem is that it upsets the pH balance because of the lactic acid that is necessary during exercise, because you run out of oxygen. So is there a way of exercising without exercising, basically? And there is something that was developed in London University. Gerry Pollock, he was a doctor and a mechanical engineer, and he said, well, if it's the hormones that decrease the weight and basically build the muscle, why don't we focus on stimulating the hormones and skip the exercise part? And there was a study that was done on RNA gene expression with this technology in 1990, before the technology was basically completely developed. And they found that there was a rapid muscular hypertrophy, 250% increase in RNA content of the muscles, and basically an activation of the skeletal slow type genes. This was an article from Sunday Times from 1994 that published the technology that started at that time in after 17 years of empirical research. And what it does, it basically gives a blueprint motor nerve signal via voltage. It throws it through the skin via voltage. That hunts for the nerve, and through resonance, it expands to the motor nerves. The motor nerves bring all those signals to the brain. The brain will release hormones, and the hormones will start the fat burning process. This is basically a movie of how it happens. The motor nerve blueprint signals hunt for the motor nerve, and the blueprint signals fuse with the motor nerve signals, and that basically resonates through the entire system. And what happens, those awakening of motor nerves around them brings all of this firing of motor nerves to the brain, because it's a central nervous system. There's only one way to go, to the brain. And the brain will then start releasing the hormones that are appropriate during exercise. That's what the brain does. It's a hormone, the estradiol, all the hormones that are related. And these hormones will travel in the blood to reach target cells, which is fat cells, and then will bind. And the insulin signals will enter the fat cells and will shrink the fat goblets and basically the mitochondria, and will form the energy to with other proteins to build the muscle. This is some of the board that's continuing the research. There was a research by Gerry Pollock that found that cortisol does not increase. We have done some more research on T3 and DHEA. We found a significant increase experimentally. And that was with MRIs. We did a recent study in Hong Kong. It's a large company in Hong Kong with Neoderm. And we found that VLDL decrease probability was 0.001 at 99%. Free T3 increased by 95%. Cortisol remained unchanged. HDL increased by 80%. IGF-1 77%. DHEA 71%. And testosterone increased 90% only for women. This is some more studies from India.
Thank you. She's going to be speaking to us on a biochemical investigation of